Oh, this is ridiculous.
Thank you for thinking of CRS.
Anything wrong?
No, nothing.
Nicholas observes his younger self standing solemnly beside their cold, distant father in black formal wear. A family prepares a grand feast in a sunlit kitchen, their silhouettes shifting like ghosts. Young children sprint across a manicured lawn, fleeing into the darkness of the looming estate. The red brick facade of the family home stands tall, an imposing monument to a traumatic past. A boy sits rigidly at a table near a pool, his smile masking an impending tragedy. Nicholas stands in a doorway with his father, clutching a model ship like a lifeline. He wipes his brow with a white cloth, a subtle tremor betraying his profound inner anxiety. A gold watch sits on a dark surface, bearing an inscription that mocks his wasted years. Nicholas navigates a cavernous, dimly lit hallway, his footsteps echoing against the cold stone floor. He grips the steering wheel, scanning the streets with a look of sharpened, predatory intensity. The city grid stretches out before him, a labyrinth of glass and steel trapping its inhabitants. The name of his own building is etched in stone, a silent promise of absolute corporate power. He sits in his plush office, surrounded by symbols of wealth that fail to offer comfort. Television screens flicker with market numbers, constant reminders of the volatile world he desperately seeks control. Nicholas stares ahead, his features tight with the burden of maintaining his cold, impenetrable facade. A woman enters his inner sanctum, her presence cutting through the heavy, stale air of dominance. She stands before him with a clipboard, ready to catalog the fragments of his failing composure. He leans back, his voice sharp as he challenges the validity of her trivial, prying questions. Nicholas remains motionless, projecting an aura of untouchable authority while deep paranoia begins to take root. His brother reaches out, planting a lingering, unsettling kiss on his temple in a crowded space. He stares at his brother, searching for any trace of sincerity behind a mask of playful deception. A birthday card lands on the table, its vibrant colors clashing with the oppressive gray atmosphere. Nicholas ignores the card, his cold focus remaining entirely on the sterile corporate office. He demands an explanation, pointing at his brother with controlled, icy, and sharp aggression. The office remains silent as he inspects the documents, his movements sharp and calculated. He holds the bag of takeout, his expression hardening into a mask of pure irritation. Sitting behind the desk, Nicholas toys with his chopsticks, deep in thought about the game. Nicholas lashes out, his hand snapping forward to shove a worker from his path.
We'll run a TRW.
The corporate leader taps his finger against the desk, his mind racing with quiet paranoia. He stares into the void of the office, reflecting on the unsettling nature of events. Nicholas grips the chair, his posture rigid as he processes the growing internal dread. He waves a hand dismissively, his composure fracturing under the weight of the unknown game. Alone now, he studies the empty room, searching for any sign of a hidden observer. The banker realizes he is trapped, his eyes wide as he looks at the walls. He turns his back on the monitors, trying to shut out the relentless corporate gaze. Nicholas sits in the shadow of his office, the weight of the game pressing down. A figure looms in the darkness of the hallway, watching his every move through glass. The worker in white crosses the corridor, unaware of the tension rising within the room. He reads the psychological questions, the ink staining his vision like a dark, creeping curse. Nicholas stares forward, his face etched with the exhaustion of a man losing his reality. He holds up the drawing, his fingers trembling as he confronts the absurdity of it. They sit across the long glass table, two men bound by a silent, dangerous agreement. He monitors the screen as the machinery of the testing facility begins to hum rhythmically. The lens of the scanner captures his reflection, mirroring the collapse of his entire world. The news anchor's face broadcasts a manufactured reality directly into his private sanctuary. He pivots, his posture rigid as he processes the distorted image on the screen. A flicker of unease crosses his face, marking the intrusion of the game's reach. The television displays a grainy, invasive feed of his own private library space. A voice on the screen offers a hollow lifeline, mocking his sudden desperation. Nicholas stares at the cold blue glow, feeling the walls of his life closing. He snaps, grabbing his coat to escape the suffocating silence of his home.
Regret to have the American ambassador expelled after...
He moves through the terminal, a man caught in an invisible, tightening web. Uniformed figures move past him, oblivious to his growing, profound internal fracture. Faces blur in the crowded terminal, turning every stranger into a potential threat. He confronts a man whose presence feels like a calculated, taunting misdirection. The conversation stutters, his internal compass spinning wildly as he demands concrete answers. Nicholas retreats into the silence of the lounge, his eyes scanning for unseen watchers. A quiet observer waits, drinking as if the outcome were already long decided. Ink bleeds into the white napkin, a dark stain mirroring his own spreading corruption. The ink seeps through his pristine shirt, ruining the facade of his controlled life. He stands alone in the shadows, waiting for the next orchestrated movement to begin. A shadow approaches, bringing words that slice through his remaining defensive armor. They stand amidst the glass, two figures framed by a world that feels synthetic. He climbs into the back of the car, retreating into the velvet-lined mobile prison. The city looms, a concrete monolith designed to swallow his identity piece by piece. He clutches the keys to a reality he no longer recognizes or can trust. Nicholas descends into the concrete gloom, his world rapidly constricting into a private hell. He navigates the silent, suffocating subterranean levels of a parking garage. Christine waits in the shadows, her presence a jarring fracture in his controlled life. They step into the elevator, the heavy steel doors sealing them inside a metallic box. Tensions peak as the lift halts, trapping them in an agonizing, silent vacuum of suspicion. He attempts to decipher the cryptic mechanics of this relentless, orchestrated game. The elevator doors crawl open, revealing only the oppressive darkness of the concrete structure. Nicholas stares at the control panel, searching for a path that doesn't lead to ruin. Panic rises within him as the machine ignores his desperate demands for a change. He pulls back into the corner, his authority evaporating under the weight of unseen observers. The lighting flickers, plunging them into a void that reflects his crumbling inner state. He finds the access panel, his fingers trembling against the cold, industrial components. Desperation forces him to bypass the safety locks, risking everything to escape his confinement. Christine watches him, a witness to the final erosion of his carefully curated facade. They trade sharp, guarded words, the air thick with the residue of mutual distrust. He climbs through the gap, leaving his professional identity behind in the shaft's abyss. Christine follows his ascent, her eyes fixed on the man she has systematically dismantled. They stand before the corporate monolith, the name itself a taunt to his former self. The logo glows in the dark lobby, a cold beacon signifying his total corporate defeat. He retreats into the night, the city's neon reflecting off the slick, rain-washed asphalt. The realization of being hunted drives him toward the grim, forgotten corners of urban life. He wakes, the heavy silence of the hotel room mocking his failed pursuit of truth. Nicholas studies the itemized bill, tracing the numbers that confirm his growing, frantic paranoia. A distorted screen flickers with a face that seems to mock his fraying composure. He spreads Polaroids across the table, desperately seeking patterns in the chaos of his life. Reflections in the glass vanity shatter his sense of self, leaving him trapped and exposed. He finds the door locked from the outside, his prison tightening around his panicked breathing. Images of a woman flash before his eyes, fueling his obsession with the elusive stranger. Nicholas scrubs his hands under running water, as if to wash away his mounting sins. He examines a small, discarded scrap of paper, searching for a clue in the wreckage. He kicks the toilet, lashing out at the sterility of his cold, uncaring surroundings. Nicholas strides down the hallway, clutching his briefcase as he flees the invisible, encroaching threat. Inside the car, he clutches a bloodied tissue, proof that the game has turned lethal. The city skyline blurs into a streak of blue, mirroring his loss of steady control. He checks the side mirror, spotting the car that has become his persistent, predatory shadow. His black vehicle cuts through the wet streets, a lone predator in a hostile landscape. He pulls into the shadows, his pulse pounding as he scans for his relentless pursuers. Nicholas waits in the dark, his eyes fixed on the man sitting in the vehicle. He confronts the driver, his voice a jagged edge of pure, unadulterated, desperate rage.
All right.
He holds the device firmly, his knuckles white as he prepares to make a call. He approaches his own car, wary of the trap set in this desolate, urban alley. Behind the wheel again, Nicholas drives with a grim, singular purpose driving his every move. He steps into the opulent lobby, a ghost of himself amidst the trappings of wealth. Nicholas finds his table set for tea, a bizarrely civilized contrast to his internal collapse. Nicholas stares into the dark abyss of the empty street from his balcony. He descends the cold, stone stairs into the hidden layers of his own city. Isolation weighs on him as he surveys the silent, deserted buildings from above. Desperation etches lines into his face under the flickering, unforgiving street lights. He descends into the bowels of a terminal, seeking truth amidst the mechanical decay. Nicholas clutches the telephone receiver, his voice trembling with the weight of unseen threats. He scans the line of parked cars, searching for the shadows of his hunters. A sudden movement in the fog forces him to brace for a violent confrontation. He retreats into the backseat of a yellow cab, heartbeat hammering against his ribs. Nicholas leans his head back, closing his eyes to shut out the encroaching madness. The driver ignores his panic, accelerating toward a destination controlled by invisible architects. The taxi's exterior glows under the neon signs, a bright target in the night. Nicholas screams as the cab veers toward the dark, churning water of the bay.
I am a very wealthy...
He lunges at the locked door, clawing at the metal as death approaches rapidly. The vehicle plunges into the dark depths, sealing him within a watery metal tomb. Gasping for air, he manages to free himself from the rapidly sinking, claustrophobic wreckage. He drifts near the massive steel pillars of the bridge, shivering in the cold. Dazed and exhausted, Nicholas emerges from the water, his life stripped of all certainty. He fumbles with a small metal object, his hands shaking from intense adrenaline withdrawal. The key clicks into the lock, a simple mechanism holding his entire world together. He stares at the physical proof of the conspiracy, clutching it to his chest. Nicholas surfaces in the icy current, gasping as reality begins its final, cruel twist. Nicholas drags himself from the frigid water, shivering into the dark night. He stumbles toward the distant safety of a brightly lit shelter. The abandoned streets hold no comfort, only the cold hum of distance. He realizes he is completely alone in this hollow, unfamiliar landscape. Exhaustion claws at his limbs, yet he forces movement toward the unknown. A car pulls into the frame, slicing through the heavy, oppressive silence. Headlights scan the path, searching for the man who lost everything tonight. He catches a glimpse of the vehicle, his heart hammering against ribs. The engine roar echoes, a predator closing in on its wounded prey. Nicholas ducks away, vanishing into the deep shadows of an alleyway wall. The headlights sweep past, leaving him huddled in the damp, freezing dark. He stares into the void, questioning if this was part of the game. A vehicle creeps through the tunnel, its presence sharp and jarringly clinical. He remains motionless, a ghost haunting the very edges of his own life. The car disappears, but the paranoia remains glued to his trembling skin. He gathers his remaining resolve and starts the long walk toward salvation. Every step feels heavy with the weight of his unraveling, fragile sanity. The city lights flicker, mocking his desperate search for a familiar face. He finds a telephone, dialing the only number etched into his memory. His voice cracks, betraying the terror he fought so hard to conceal. He begs for an end to the psychological siege breaking his spirit. Nicholas finally surrenders to the exhaustion, sinking into the truth of defeat. Nicholas drifts through the empty, hollowed-out corridors of his own life. He finds a discarded, final notice of public auction hanging like a guillotine. A figure moves through the dark, cold architecture of his former home. He traces the banister, feeling the weight of ghosts in the silence. Nicholas sifts through a glass jar of cash, searching for a tether. A taxi idles outside, a metallic beast waiting to swallow his remaining certainty. He confronts the front desk, his voice a jagged edge against the marble. The clerk smiles, an impenetrable mask hiding the mechanics of his torment. Nicholas stares into the abyss of his own reflection, eyes burning with paranoia. The clerk speaks in polite riddles, sealing his fate with practiced indifference. Nearby, a van sits under heavy trees, a silent witness to his descent. A woman waits in the shadows, her presence a jagged anomaly in reality. They meet in a diner, the air thick with unspoken, lethal accusations. Nicholas leans in, his composure fraying like a worn, expensive silk thread. He demands the truth, his knuckles white against the formica table surface. A waitress pours water, the sound amplified in the suffocating tension between them. The diner patrons are silhouettes, unaware they watch a man disintegrate completely. He accuses her, his voice a desperate, cracking plea for some clarity. His frustration boils over, a volcanic eruption contained in a dying suit. Christine remains calm, her serenity a sharpened blade against his manic state. He stares at the ceiling, sensing the invisible eyes tracing his every move. The game accelerates, pulling him toward the inevitable, final, crashing conclusion. Sparks erupt from the metal frame, searing the air with an electric, industrial heat. He staggers back, disoriented by the abrupt violence of the physical assault. His expression contorts with the crushing weight of realization and deep, hollow grief. The facade of his controlled life begins to fracture under the unbearable pressure. Tears trace lines through the dust of his survival in the unforgiving night. He meets a familiar face, seeking grounding in a world turned utterly alien. Broken and weary, he bows his head, accepting the gravity of his situation. He wanders through the gloom, searching for a purpose that no longer exists. The silence of the rooftop amplifies the erratic pulse of his desperate heart. He balances on the precipice, staring into the abyss of his final choice. He steps forward, surrendering himself to the cold, unforgiving dark of the city. Gravity claims him, pulling his body toward an abrupt and violent destiny. Glass shatters into a million shimmering shards, raining down like a jagged waterfall. He lands hard, the breath forced from his lungs by the sudden, cushioned impact. Faces surround him in the wreckage, their expressions shifting from shock to relief. He drifts through the hazy aftermath, struggling to reconcile his survival with his past. Surrounded by an applauding crowd, he feels the cold prickle of an impossible truth. They embrace a strange, tangled knot of brotherhood woven from calculated deception. He is handed a garment that mocks the absolute terror he just endured. The absurdity of the moment hangs in the air, thick with unspoken secrets. He collapses into a protective hold, finally letting the wall of detachment crumble. They stand together, two ghosts anchored in the center of a staged epiphany. He offers a weary, half-formed smile, still haunted by the ghosts of his descent. He steps out into the rain, a man reborn yet permanently scarred by the game.